Hi everybody and welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about doing better internet research. So I want you, before you watch this video, to read the handout about the CRAP test, the so-called CRAP test. That is a way to get better internet research. The last papers that you did, either I gave you the research or you found things through the library databases where experts have already kind of culled through things. They're more reliable. But a lot of times there's more information on the actual internet and it's easier to find. The problem is sorting through that information. So we want things that are current, reliable. That means, are they recent? What kind of information is in the source? Does it have facts and statistics? Is it padded with irrelevant information? Does it have good examples? Can you find some of the same facts elsewhere? Authority. Who is the author? We talked about this when we talked about ethos. Do they have credibility? Do they have a good character? Who is publishing the material? We talked a lot before in rhetorical analysis about bias. So making sure that whoever's publishing it doesn't have a bias and is giving you, again, reliable information. And finally, the purpose or the point of view. Is it fact or is it opinion? Are they trying to sell something? Is it clickbait? All of that kind of thing. I really want you to focus on those things. So after you take a look at the entire handout, then you can watch the rest of this. We're going to start just looking at Google. I've picked a topic for today that we can use for research, something that's just a little bit broad. So let's say that you were doing a persuasive essay on how to prevent terrorism. That's not your topic, but that's what we're going to kind of use today. So if I in Google just put in terrorism, as you have probably done in Google before, it comes up with a very vague definition. Then our first website here is Wikipedia. So the problem with Wikipedia is that it's a wiki, meaning that anybody can add to it, anybody can go in and change it. So if I wanted to go into this thing about terrorism, and then I wanted to just sort of go in and edit. Let's say that etymology, they're giving the background for the word there. I can say, no, that's not correct. It doesn't come from the Latin. It comes from a Greek word. Well, I might not really have the authority to do that. So if I just delete this whole section, etymology, I can delete that whole section. Now, Wikipedia will probably change that back at some point if I were to save that. But the point is that I can go in and edit anything I want, and I might not really know about terrorism. I might have links to sources. If you look here, I'm going to undo it. They have a footnote to a reference, right? The problem is that maybe that reference itself isn't reliable. Another thing about Wikipedia is that a lot of things are copied and pasted from other sources. So you have problems with copyright as well. So some of the reasons that I want you to stay out of it. Another thing to know when you do a Google search is that many things in a Google search, not maybe so much with terrorism, but with other things, many things in a Google search, people pay to have their links listed at the top. The New York Times, I can guarantee you, has paid to be up in the top thing. The same thing with the Independent from the UK. That's a huge newspaper overseas. Those two publications want you to go to their website first. Now with this, maybe it's not that big of an issue, but let's say that I go and look for something like homeschool. If I could spell it right. Let's say I'm trying to decide whether or not I should send my child to homeschool. What comes up first? Homeschool.com, the #1 homeschooling community. K through 12, Connections Academy. Primitive Pursuits, Homeschool. All three of those things are sponsored. Now, it doesn't tell you that right up front. It doesn't say that it's an ad. Sometimes Google will tell you that it's an ad. But what they have done is they've used SEO. SEO is search engine optimization. That means that there are things on that website that make the website come up when I put in certain words. The other thing is the number of people who have clicked on it or who have searched from it. K-12 Connections Academy has a lot of ads on TV right now, so that might be one of the reasons that they're up there. But it's very deceptive. And so you have to really consider what you're actually looking for. Is this clickbait or is this an actual article? We're going to go back to our results about terrorism. So, let's say I'm just looking for a general article about how the media is changing for terrorism. That might be it. But that doesn't really tell me anything about the subject that I initially started looking for. The subject I initially started looking for was prevention. So I'm going to limit my search terms here and put in more things. Terrorism prevention in the United States. Now I might be able to get a few more specific sources. You notice that what comes up is scholarly articles. Partially the reason that comes up on my search is because I've been doing research for scholarly articles about various subjects, right? We also have some information from the DHS. That's a .gov site. If you have something with a .org, a .gov, or a .edu, a lot of times that's going to be a little bit more reliable than a .com. .com stands for commercial, .gov stands for government. .org stands for organization, and .edu stands for education. So if you find something from the government, from a non-for-profit organization, or from an educational institution, sometimes those will be a little bit more reliable. Not all the time. Sometimes there's organizations that are not reliable whatsoever, but some of the time. So let's click on this. The reason that I'm going to click on this is to talk about how to find the information then to put into your Works Cited once you have found a source. This is from the Department of Homeland Security, Preventing Terrorism. They have a couple different articles here. I'm not sure. Let me go down to a lot of times the information will be on the bottom. So this one, as you can see, does not have a date. So I'm not sure the last time it was updated. Oh, there we go. Last published June 26, 2018. Well, right now when I'm making this video, it's August. If you could see from Google, John McCain just passed away. So it's August 2018 as I'm making this video. So this is actually pretty updated, and we also have press releases from just a couple days ago. So when I go into one of these, Preventing Terrorism Overview, this is going to give me a really much better overview than Wikipedia, right? Because it's coming from the Department of Homeland Security. Their literal job is to prevent terrorism. That's the point of that organization. So it's probably experts who are writing this. Now, you might also say, Professor Cassidy, I'm sorry. That's my old name, you guys. I just got married a little bit ago. You might also say Professor Hall. Oh, sorry. You might also say Professor Hall. What if I don't trust the government? Well, that's a good point. If you don't trust the government, then find something from other sources. Or you can argue against something from the government. That's always fine too. But it's going to be a little bit slightly, and depending sometimes who's in office and who's putting out the information, it's not going to it's biased toward the government's point of view. Let me put it that way. So here, actually, this isn't really giving me too much information. It's giving me an overview, results of what they've done. If you see something, say something. So let's say that I really want to have results about Homeland Security that are not from Homeland Security. I think they might be biased, let's say, and I want to find out from a third party how reliable they are. This is another good way of fact checking. So I'm going to put terrorism, effectiveness, Homeland Security. If I had actually taken a look at their facts there, I could try to find information. So here we've got 15 years after 9/11, is America safer? After 9/11, Washington struggled to improve Homeland Security. I'm not sure what the Belfer Center is. So before I go there, I'm going to double check their organization and just open up their basic website for the Belfer Center. This is my way of kind of checking, do they have the authority? This is the Belfer Center for Science and International Affairs. They are part of Harvard. So actually, it's an organization within an educational institution. Most likely, they don't really have as much of a bias, right? It's not like the government organization reporting on itself. So I could possibly find something from them that might be a little bit more solid. The other thing here is that we have things from experts. They tell you who the experts are. They show you what research they've been doing, and they tell you what events they have coming up. So you can read quite a bit about them before you go into the article, which we're going to do now. One of the other things too, so we have a title, we have an actual author. If we click on that author's name, which I'm going to do in a new tab, we can see possibly what else he has written, or it will give you his background. So he is, if I can get out of there, he is the Director for International Security Program. He is an editor-in-chief. He's been a principal investigator, and he's a member of the board for this particular organization. Here are his expertise areas, and if I click on those, it actually goes to some of the other research he's done. It gives me a full biography, who he is, where he went to school. He has a Master's of Arts in Law and Diplomacy. He has a PhD in Law and Diplomacy. So this guy is an expert, right? He has the authority to talk about this subject. This article, as you can see, is pretty comprehensive, but it's not like 50 pages long. It's from 2003, and that's the only thing I would maybe be careful about. They're talking about something that happened in September 11th, which was in 2001. So how much have things changed from 2003 till 2018, 2019, 2020, right? They have changed quite a bit. So this has the authority, and I would maybe use it for some of the background information, what actually happened on 9/11, what happened before 9/11, but I wouldn't necessarily use it in part of my argument about what is currently happening now to prevent terrorism. However, I think it is a good example of you doing the research, found an article, had authority, has solid information. It's clearly long. That doesn't always mean that it's good, but it's long enough. It has quotations from other experts. It has some statistics you can see in there, right? However, it's just not current. So I would have to keep doing research. And that's my number one thing that I want to tell you guys about doing research on Google. You cannot just grab the first link that's there. As you could see from when I did research right away, the first links were, in one case, they were all ads. In another case, they were supported things that were like from Wikipedia that just weren't reliable. So you kind of have to do some digging. Another good tool that you can use is Google News. One of the great things about finding articles that are not reliable, like the one, or not current rather, like the one we just found, is that Google News is very up to date. You can see that I've got headlines here from 38 minutes ago. And if I go in and look for terrorism prevention, I'm going to come up with a number of items. Here we have a new trend of terrorism requires innovative prevention intervention plans. This is from the Jordan Times. That's a newspaper that's in the Middle East, or at least it reports about things in the Middle East. And it was published 4 hours ago. So it's from a reliable source, and it is extremely current. I don't know what the new trend is, but certainly the article that we just found from 2003 isn't going to have the same information because this is a new trend, right? Student 14 referred to terror prevention program after he was groomed by anti-fracking activists. This is from the Telegraph. That's something in the UK. Now, if I want stuff just from the US, I can click over here on the left to limit down the articles that I find. And I'm going to put my search terms in again. And then we can kind of go through and look for something from the United States, because apparently you can't really limit stuff anymore. They just redid Google News, so it's done a little bit differently. At any rate, you can see that you can get stuff directly from here, and you can also save your searches. So if you find a bunch of stuff, you can save it. There's also tools here to hide stories from certain places if you want. And you can share, meaning you could save for later, you could share, you can download, that type of thing. So one of you used to there we go. Sorry. One of the other things that you can use is Google Scholar. Google Scholar is also in the library databases. I think that if you're going to look for scholarly articles, the library databases are a better way to go, and I will tell you why. Terrorism prevention, there we go. When we get into Google Scholar, the nice thing over here is that you can get them just for this year, just for last year, for the last 4 or 5 years. You can do a custom range as well. You want to unclick patents and citations, because citations just have that works cited bibliography information, right? They don't have the actual article, and neither do a lot of these. So you notice this one has the PDF, that one I can access the HTML for, but a lot of these don't have the actual article. They just have like a brief thing where it's cited or where it is used somewhere else. This one's from 1975, so let's limit it over to 2018. Terrorism in tourist destinations, terrorism prevention imperative, psychological evaluations for all immigrants. Now, I think that could be an interesting article, and it also has the PDF. So you could click on that. The thing is, with Google Scholar, it is up to date. It does sometimes have journals that are unavailable in library databases. The problem is that it's not always easy to find stuff that you can actually access. And quite frankly, I'm kind of surprised here that you can. I have to say, just to go back for a second, I sort of glitched over Google News, but you used to be able to search things in Google News by the type of news, kind of like you could with the library databases, where you could look for things from the past couple weeks. You could look for things from a certain date range, and you could also go by like magazines or newspapers or online journals, but you really can't do that anymore, so I'm not sure how effective it will be. I will say this, that when you go into Yahoo News, Yahoo News features a lot of clickbait, and that's one of the reasons that I usually talk about Google News instead of Yahoo News, because when you're in Yahoo News, I mean, look, Skullduggery, Matt Bay, Yahoo Originals, Unfiltered. Now, there's some things here that are actually actual news stories, because there was some news today. But I gotta tell you, I went in here the other day and it was like, I don't know, like stuff about the Kardashians and stuff. I don't know if that's tailored to me or what, but I didn't appreciate that so much. If I look up terrorism prevention, though, and I'm doing an actual serious search, I'll get back to Google Scholar in a moment, sorry. If I do an actual serious search for it, it basically comes up with websites, right? So it's not actual news stories the way that Google News has news stories. You can't really search things the same way. So that's one of the I had somebody in one of my other classes the other day ask me about this, why I don't use Yahoo News, and I was like, this is why. Because it sucks. I don't like using it. I don't think it's that good of a search engine. So here, going back to the Google Scholar, the nice thing about a lot of these is that they have a button to cite. Again, you can share, you can download the PDF. The abstract, as we talked about with the videos on library research, the abstract is giving you a brief summary of what the article is about. So here this says psychological evaluations of immigrant applicants have been widely used for 2 decades in the United States federal legal system. The principle and purpose was to assist immigration authorities in making determinations regarding the status of immigrants. So this actually could maybe be a good article if I'm looking for how to prevent terrorism. I'm not sure who this is, but it has one other article by him. He's from a counseling center of Santa Monica. You can search Google Scholar for him, so that's kind of nice. So that's how Google Scholar is set up. I mean, it's relatively simple and easy to use. The real key is to look over here on the right for other things that you can actually use, right? Then we get into Google Books. And Google Books is just books.google.com, just the way Scholar is scholar.google.com. I love using Google Books so much. And why is that? Well, if you look, I'm going to zoom in here if I can. If you look, see how some of these have like a little kind of upturned page here and here? This one down here does not. Having an upturned page means that they have a preview. And if you are a college student, as I was a couple years ago, I can tell you that probably you don't have a lot of money to get books, and also sometimes you don't have time to actually go to the library and find them. So this one is meeting the challenges of global terrorism. That actually sounds like it works for my assignment that I'm thinking about. But when was it published? 2002. That was so long ago. So let's take a look at strategies for preventing terrorism. I'm not sure where this is from, but I'm going to click on the guy's name to see what else he's written. Oh, just this book. Well, let me tell you, I've written a couple books, and even writing one is hard. But I want to go in to this book and see what it has. If it has a preview, that sometimes means that you can do a search for certain things. So let's say that I was looking for preventing terrorism. I want this exact phrase. If you notice, my exact phrase is over here on the left in the box, and I'm going to look just for that phrase. Oops. So I've clicked all, and now all of the results with that phrase have come up. If you notice, some of these pages are hyperlinked. They have a blue underline. That means that I can see the entire page. But some of them are not hyperlinked. My internet's really slow here. Some of them are not hyperlinked, but even then you can sometimes find like a quote or a sentence or a statistic that you could look up elsewhere. So it is kind of helpful. But here I can see page X, prevention model fails to integrate key aspects of other models, which is interesting to me. What are the various prevention models? Well, I can click on the book and find out. So it's quite easy using Google Books to find some information. Sometimes an entire book will be available to you to take a look at, but a lot of times most books will at least have 20 or 30 pages, and for a shorter essay you might be able to find something there. So those are some tools that you can use that go beyond just Google. We talked before about getting down under the layer of that iceberg beyond just the normal visible web. Google Scholar and Google Books, and also Google Scholar and Google Books are ways that kind of look a little bit deeper beyond the visible web. When you're using regular Google, make sure you go through results. Look through pages or pages if you need to find what exactly you're looking for. A couple other tips for regular Google, which I'll get out of Yahoo News here. One of the things that people don't know too is that you can look for exact terms. So if I want to, in quotation marks, terrorism prevention in the United States, I can find things that have that exact phrase. And you'll notice right away, 9/11 Commission Fast Facts. This is from this month. And it has been a study since 2011. So that could be quite helpful to me. There's not as many because that's a longer phrase. Another thing, like let's say I'm looking up global warming and I don't think it's real, but a lot of places do. Global warming, not real. I should have put an is in there. This is from Quora. Is there a reason to believe global warming is not real? Not really that reliable. But this is an article from The Express, a newspaper in Great Britain, and that actually might be a little bit more reliable. Now, it's just reporting on it. It's not making an argument. But I think that, and then I can search news as well for that same phrase. And apparently it's not coming up, or some very strange thing is coming up there. How can we prevent terrorism? Okay. Childhood and terror. How can we prevent terrorism? That's from LinkedIn, and it doesn't look like it really relates to what we're looking for, right? So sometimes having too many search terms is not really a good thing. But you can look for things in quotation marks, and that's another way to kind of limit down your searches. So my recommendation for stuff from the internet is to start with more reliable things like Google Scholar, especially if you don't have access to the library databases. And then you can look for newspaper articles and magazine articles through Google News. And then sometimes you can find a little bit of information through Google Books as well. So hopefully you've learned a little bit about how to use those tools if you didn't know already. And I look forward to looking at your annotated bibliographies where you do your own web research. Thanks.